So here we are, 2026, a brand new year, and the second year that Austin and I have been doing Ghosts in the Mountains. We have covered a ton of very strange stories, and you would think that over time that maybe we would start to get a little bit more of a grasp on what this whole thing is, the paranormal, and what exactly is going on. And in some regards, yeah, maybe I feel like I do understand a little bit more. But then you come across stories like this one. Now, with any reported haunting, there's always a chance that the story that you're being told just simply is made up. But when you have other people that are experiencing the same thing, and all of those stories seem to line up, well, that's when things start to get really, really strange. Now, through the first 51 episodes of Ghosts in the Mountains, there's really only a handful that I would classify as even getting close to being a 10 out of 10 as far as reported paranormal activity goes. But this one is definitely a 10 out of 10. So, you might want to turn the lights down and get comfortable, because as soon as you think that you know where this story is going, it just takes another turn. So let's kick off 2026 with a real banger of a strange story, and let's try to figure this one out. But there's a good chance that we all might come out of this one feeling like there's even more to the other side that we do not understand, and it can get very, very dark. The Appalachian Mountains are some of the oldest in the world, and we just happen to live in them. One thing we can tell you, there are ghosts in the mountains.
Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Ghosts in the Mountains. I am your host, Caleb Hanks, and as always, I am joined by the one, the only, the doctor, the captain, neither doctor nor captain, Dr. Captain Austin Burgess. Brother, how are you rolling into 2026 so far?
It has been great so far. We're, a few weeks in now, officially, and, kicking off the year with a bang.
Oh, yes, indeed we are. My timeline is all strange because you and I are bizarre time travelers, and I am still just recovering from the end of Stranger Things, and I think that 2026, in the world of Ghosts in the Mountains, has plenty of strange things ahead. And starting off with our incredible interview this year with none other than the great Joshua P. Warren.
The elusive.
The very elusive Joshua P. Warren. It was really wonderful to be able to kick off the new year with a bang and have him finally on here. The
right.
Warrenverse himself, the man that has done a lot of the groundwork for us.
Right. He probably has been referenced in at least 30 of the first 50 episodes, I'd say. So
Gotta be.
Yeah. Glad that we could finally go into the new year, should I say, with him joining us.
100%, my man. So it's going to be hard to top being able to interview one of the guys that introduced me to a vast majority of the topics that we ended up talking about on this podcast.
Yeah, probably introduced all of Western North Carolina to a lot of these topics, really.
100%. So I'm thinking about this whole thing. I'm like, dear God, where do we go from here? How do we make the beginning of the year start off with even more of a bang after getting to talk with Josh? And that is when a particular story breezes across my desk.
This is actually one that you'd been petitioning for a while, I believe.
Yeah, because it's really, really, really wild.
It is. It is a very strange story. And I think you said, was it John that originally sent you this?
Yes, it was John Nyberger from
Yeah.
our brothers over there at the Soul of the Unexplained podcast. You know, Austin and I just did a wonderful end of the year wrap up with John Nyberger, Jim Kielgard, and the wonderful John Stratton over there at Soul of the Unexplained. And if you haven't checked out their podcast, it's SOL, Soul of the Unexplained. They're on YouTube and a bunch of other podcast providers. But yeah, you can find me and Austin on there talking a little bit about, you know, kind of some of the behind the scenes stuff that we do here and just, you know, some of the highlights of the year. But yeah, my good buddy, John Nyberger, I call him Ron because I just like to be confusing and he thinks it's funny. So Ron Nyberger, I also call him Ron Wafer sometimes because, you know, he might be one of those elusive wafer brothers that one day I'll describe to the public what that is. But he sends me this video and it's very well-known dude that tells a lot of crazy paranormal stories on the internet, Mr. Ballin. Now, I was not super familiar with Mr. Ballin's channel. I'd definitely seen some like clips of interviews where he was like being interviewed about weird stuff, and I was like, this guy tells good stories. I actually featured one thing that I'd heard from him on our Faces of Evil Volume 2, which was that strange story where that couple almost gets got by Ted Bundy in the woods.
I didn't realize that was one of his.
Yeah, that's the first place I heard it from him. So I'm thinking, well, this guy seems to know kind of what's going on in the realm of the spookily and the dookily. And he just starts spinning this yarn. I'm paying attention to it because it's something that John Nyberger sent me. And the more he goes on with the story, the weirder and the weirder and the weirder it gets. And I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, but this is some of the craziest shit I have ever heard. And I'm like, I'm gonna give this story the benefit of the doubt. I want to get to the bottom of like what the hell is actually going on. And so this story, I'm calling it today, The Haunting of Bill Vaile. And if you've heard of this guy, then you might know where we're going with this, but you know, I needed to get the definitive answers on where this was going, and there's no other person on the planet that can figure out this stuff better than you know him, you love him.
Joshua P. Warren.
He probably could, but the Dr. Captain Burgess, I knew you would take the usual deep dive, being pulled through the water by your, like, almost like Santa Claus sleigh of like anglerfish that pull you through the deep depths.
Psychedelically.
Psychedelically. And I knew that you would be able to figure out what was going on with this. So, dude, without me further blabbing my ass off, what the hell is up with Bill Vaile?
Man, that is a very layered question, I believe, and one that we might get to the bottom of here.
I hope we do.
But just for all intents and purposes, the story we're talking about today was actually featured on the TV show Paranormal Witness. I think that came out about 12 or 13 years ago. So that's really what kind of debuted this story into the public. But what makes this case a little different from like some of those other stories you see on those, you know, traditional paranormal TV shows is that this experiencer did not choose to remain anonymous for the show, the portrayal. In fact, he was openly interviewing on the show for the episode. He shared experience, and he's been just very public about this whole thing. Even went on to publish a book about the entire ordeal, which I'm actually pulling as my primary source for this episode.
Right.
So, you know, there's a lot out there. There's obviously the original episode. There's the Mr. Ballin video, which I did watch, which kind of introduced me to this. But, you know, if we're digging into this, I want to get this straight from the horse's mouth here. And that's what we're able to do with Bill's book that he pretty much published describing his experience with this.
No doubt. So what year does this man's bogus journey or excellent adventure begin? And does he have a friend named Ted?
He does not have a friend named Ted. He has a brother named Bob.
Well, that's weird.
I was going to say, isn't there a little bit of time, you know, when a Bill, Bob, former scientist?
Yes, I've got some good buddies. Well, unfortunately, one of them has since passed, but Bill and Bob, if you happen to be listening, you know who you are. And Bill, I love you and I miss you. But yeah, that was funny because when I first heard that story, I was like, hey, Bill and Bob.
That was the first thing that crossed my mind. I was like, is Caleb just sending me his friend's experience? But I realized it was a different Bill and Bob.
I wish. That way I would really get to understand the story, but
right.
Unfortunately.
So yeah, this story actually takes place in Arlington, Texas, but from what I've kind of found, the location isn't really that like central or important to this case. It really revolves around Bill Vaile, who's kind of the main character of this episode today. And Arlington does have its share of ghost and paranormal stories, but nothing that I found could really link back to Bill's experience.
Yeah.
So kind of easy to say this is really central to him. And to kind of give you some background, Bill is this technically minded engineer. He's got this impressive scientific, educational, and career background. Most notably, he worked for NASA as a robotics engineer, among other positions. He was actually a pilot for NASA earlier in his career. And on top of that, I think he spent some time in the military. He was a sonar supervisor on a submarine at one point. So he's definitely a pretty sharp tack there. He knows his way around various aspects of the scientific world. And he's pretty kind of self-described as being grounded and a little bit skeptic into anything that science can't quite explain.
Sure. That's why when I started hearing the story, I'm like, this is a NASA engineer claiming these things?
Exactly. And I think that adds a little bit of credibility to it because you've got someone that has been firmly rooted in the scientific, academic, and career world who all of a sudden has some weird things that can't be explained by science happen to him.
Yeah. Well, that's the first head turner for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's kind of the headline that catches a lot of people's eyes is like NASA engineer experiences this. So
Right.
To answer your previous question there, this all kind of starts around 2002. He goes through what's kind of considered a life-changing divorce for him, which brought him back to his hometown of Arlington. He took a job at his brother's water purification company just to kind of land on his feet till he was figuring things out. And it was just kind of a nice reset for him. His family was all back in Arlington, so it gave him that opportunity to just be around people he knew and felt comfortable with, and what is kind of a big life-changing event for him.
Right.
So, as I mentioned, he gets that job with his brother's water purification company. And, after a few weeks, he's still kind of the new guy on the job. So he's getting sent on a lot of the calls that no one else really wants to do. And he's just trying to be a good team player with it. So he's just like trying to earn the respect. So he's not complaining about anything. So when one Saturday comes up and they get a call wanting to go to someone's house, basically giving them the pitch on the whole water purification system to begin with, Bill takes the job, just wanting to kind of step up, be that team player.
Right.
And so he gets in touch with the dispatcher, and the dispatcher of the company tells him that the woman who placed the call requested that he be there exactly at 5 o'clock. He's like, okay, well, kind of got a couple hours to kill. I think it was about 3 o'clock at the time. So he drives around. He arrives about, a little bit before 5 o'clock on the property, and he's walking up the stairs up to the porch of what is this brick house that he's going to do his call at. But Bill said as he got closer to the house, he could hear the sound of someone screaming, which pretty alarming thing to walk up on, not knowing what you're getting into.
Right.
But at first, Bill kind of thought like, oh shit, I'm about to walk into some like domestic violence situation. And he's just like, what do I do here? And he kind of like considers this, and he's like, I don't want to necessarily leave because what if something happens and I just walked away from it? And he's also thinking like they called for someone to be here. So like maybe this is part of the plan for me to come. And if nothing else, like I don't want to get in trouble with my job. I don't want them to call back and be like, where was this guy that was supposed to show up?
Yeah.
So since, he's already there, he goes up and starts to ring the doorbell. But as he gets up to the doorbell, he notices that the voice that's screaming is basically coming from directly on the other side of the door. Like they're right in that entryway. And, he rings the doorbell, no response, rang it a few more times just to be sure. Still nothing going on. He's like, well, I better just make sure. So he goes and he knocks on the door. And as soon as he knocked, the door just kind of slid open a few inches, enough for him to see inside and see what's going on. And Bill says that he witnessed 3 young men all kneeling on the floor with the woman standing above them, screaming, "Get out of here. Leave these people. In the name of Jesus Christ, leave these people."
Your typical water purification call.
And Bill said from there, the woman looked at him with what he described as an unsettling stare that he claimed passed right through him. And without a word, she walked over, closed the door, and just resumed screaming. Now, I think it's a good time to mention at this point in his life, Bill was like very practical, very pragmatic, just scientific minded, very skeptical of anything that would be considered paranormal, supernatural, or anything like that. So this was a whole other world for him. He'd never even had a frame of reference to place this within. So after witnessing this bizarre, kind of unsettling event, Bill said he simply walked away thinking, man, those boys must have done something really bad and were being punished. And he kind of just shrugged it off and went on with his weekend.
It's like, I mean, yeah. I mean, if you don't look into what things like exorcisms typically seem to look like, I guess that's probably going to be your takeaway.
Yeah, I would guess so.
You have been naughty little boys.
Either that or he's just like, I'm going to tell myself that's what that was and get the hell out of here.
Sure, that easily could be the case.
Because it's interesting when you're reading his book and he recounts this story is kind of placed later in the middle when he's kind of like, well, I thought back to this one occurrence I had that maybe could have explained things. And it's like, let's just start with this off the bat because I think this is kind of important to lead with here. But anyways, later on, Bill's just going on with his life. He's relaxing at his house. He's watching TV. And this is when he notices a small little figure dart across the floor out of the corner of his eye.
All right.
And, his mind instantly is just like now I have to deal with some kind of rodent that's gotten in the house. Like, he's not thinking anything related to what he experienced previously has connected here.
Sure.
But and maybe it's not. Who knows? But in his mind, it is just 100% some type of rat that got in the house. No other explanation for it. So he turns on all the lights. He starts searching the house. And over an hour later, he kind of just gives up and decides to go to bed. Well, later that night, he wakes up suddenly to what he claims felt like some type of small creature running over his feet at the edge of his bed.
That in itself, still not too crazy.
Yeah, not the craziest thing in the world, especially if you thought you saw a rat. And you're probably just like, that thing's in my bed now.
Yeah, oh God.
So it's like, yeah.
That in itself is nightmare fuel.
Exactly. So he flips on the lights and he goes searching for what he assumes is this rat that somehow got into his house and is scurrying all over him in bed. And he looks everywhere, like under his bed, under his dresser. He stops to listen, trying to see if he could hear little rat paws or anything, but can't hear anything. And at this point, he kind of starts just to question himself. Like, did he even see anything in the first place? Was the thing running over his feet just like part of a dream he had that was feeding off him thinking he saw something earlier? And he's just kind of really just doubting whether anything happened to begin with in the first place.
Yeah.
Easy enough to write off. So he turns off the lights and he goes back to sleep. And he said he got a little bit of sleep before he was awoken again, but this time by his bed, just shaking. And kind of naturally, being scientific minded, he's like, well, an earthquake on top of everything else. And he's kind of drowsy at this point. Before he could think too much about it, the shaking stops and he just falls back asleep.
Probably just one of those Arlington, Texas rat quakes.
Well, apparently the shaking resumed for the next couple of nights. The next night was another kind of similar situation, just like light shaking in the night, like kind of wake up in that liminal space. Like, I really experienced that again, or is this just kind of like something me being thrown off with my equilibrium in my sleep? But then the third night, it's a little bit different. The third night, he described the shaking as being violent. And it basically says in his book, he compares it to being on a carnival ride without a harness. So that's some serious shaking on the bed. I just picture like that UFO Gravitron ride that like slams you up against the other sides. But yeah, he says that this one just kind of pisses him off. He jumps up, the shaking stops, and he just starts looking. It's like, okay, are there any earthquakes going on? So that's when he hops online. Like, there's any sites reporting earthquakes in the area, anything like this. Nothing was reported.
He stands in the room and says, if my bed's going to be shaken, there better be two people in it, damn it.
Well, there might have been, but not the kind that he wanted.
Not the fun kind.
Yeah. So yeah, he's looking for just some sort of frame of reference where he can make this make sense. But there's no earthquakes reported anywhere within this time frame for this area. And at this point, he's like, well, I know I experienced my bed shaking this time. The first nights, maybe I could have wrote that off. But like with the violent shaking, he's like, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
So he says that he claims he goes over to his bed, which I guess is described as one of these like big, heavy bed frames. And he says he tries to shake it himself, but he can't get the thing to budge, even the tiniest bit.
Yeah.
That's pretty weird. And at this point, he said that, with the bed shaking scene, his mind was just like kind of racing for an explanation. and he was just unable to get any rest for the rest of the night. You know, I think that experiencing something like that when you are so staunchly against anything paranormal or supernatural that you can't come up with explanations for, dude's just racking his brain trying to find something that might explain just the weird string of events that he's experienced over those past few nights.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I were somebody that was from that kind of engineering background and I was trying to look at things as, like, you know, not even trying to entertain the ideas of some sort of paranormal origin of this, I would start to think about things like, is there something wrong with my sewer system, my piping in the house?
yeah.
And it's potentially like rattling from underneath the floor or the walls, and like somehow this thing is happening. But I think he also probably would have been able to feel like, you know, a vibration in the floor as well.
It probably wouldn't have stopped as soon as he stood up too.
Yeah, exactly. So
the rational explanation he reaches kind of makes sense to me, because I think he convinces himself that the idea of an earthquake was somehow put into his peripheral, whether he saw that on a show he was watching, whether it was on the news. And he'd kind of been just a little bit on edge with seeing the rat and some of these other stuff. And maybe he thinks that because I heard the word earthquake, I'm having these extremely vivid nightmares, and I'm convincing myself that these are real situations. You know, potential for that to happen 3 nights in a row is a little bit odd, but this is what he uses to kind of convince himself that, hey, I've got some weird situation that's going on. My dreams are a little bit out of control right now.
yeah. Or I'm having an ongoing stroke.
That too. I mean, there are a little bit of just references to health issues that he experienced kind of shortly after walking into that weird exorcism type situation. He says that he started having heart problems like not even a week after visiting the house call that he went on.
Oh shit, I don't remember that part. Damn.
I don't know if that was in the Mr. Ballin video. There's a few details that are a little bit just skewed between that version and what Bill describes in his book.
Right. That's kind of spooky.
It definitely is. And, you know, I think some of that can be, because as you'll see, things just kind of continue to ramp up from here. And he starts to get into some almost extreme paranoia mental states. I think he might have, you know, brought some of these mental problems or health problems on himself mentally through.
Yeah, probably so. I mean, he's already going through a very stressful thing with the divorce, the
exactly.
move. He's having to relocate. I mean, dude, those are like all of the stressful compactors all put into one.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think he's still just trying to find rational explanations for this. The earthquake thing, the dream, he kind of made himself believe it. How much he believed it, I'm not really sure, because he's still going over other explanations. Maybe there's military fighter jets that are passing over that have, you know, created a sonic boom that shook my house. Maybe there's oil rigs somewhere in the nearby area drilling and causing some sort of quake. But couldn't really find anything definitive. And a few weeks passed from there, and no violent bed shaking was experienced. But Bill did report of series kind of just strange sounds coming from the house over the following weeks. Mysterious knocks and bangs, dishes rattling, doors and cabinets being slammed shut. And unable to find any sort of rational explanation for all of this, Bill kind of just writes this off in the same way as the bed shaking. Whether that be a dream, whether that be just sounds being distorted in a weird way. He's just trying to convince himself nothing's going on. All is good here.
Yeah. You know, this is something that I've actually looked into a little bit here in my own house, because, you know, the normal house pops and cracks and you hear all these kinds of little random things. This particular house, for some reason, it makes a lot of noise. Just little, nothing like too disturbing or anything, but I notice a lot of just like little random settling noises of the house. And I think that certain people interpret those as different things.
For
you know?
sure. Yeah.
I think that the people that are a little bit more, they just kind of like their default is to go to something a bit more paranormal. They're probably going to interpret that in a way that maybe I wouldn't, because you and I, our baseline usually is like, let's start with the most logical explanation. And then if it really gets out of hand, then we'll kind of go towards the paranormal.
For sure. And I think the longer you live in a place, you kind of know the sounds of your own house. You're
Exactly.
Like, you have things that might sound weird to outsiders, but you're like, oh, that's just my HVAC kicking on upstairs. Sounds like a troll in the attic.
That old HVAC troll. I'm surprised we didn't cover that story during the holiday season with all the Krampus and random stuff.
That's next one. We got to save some of those lore for next holiday season.
Exactly.
But yeah, he did say that during all this, he would occasionally still catch movement out of the corner of his eye, but when he would go and turn to look in that direction fully, nothing was there.
Right.
And we've heard that, time and time again. You've experienced that. You've detailed. I'm thinking of Grove Park Inn, Elaine's probably specifically there when you experienced that.
Exactly.
Kind of similar encounter or phenomenon.
Not to drone on too much about it, but this was something that we were talking about on the Soul of the Unexplained. I've mentioned it multiple times on the podcast, but when we were filming with Guts and Bolts down there in the Capitol building in Raleigh, I see something out of my peripheral vision.
Mm-hmm.
I make note of it because we're there on a frickin' paranormal investigation. Next thing we know, there is objective proof on the security camera in the exact location. So that's when I start paying a little bit more attention to that stuff. But again, you have floaters in your eyes. Sometimes your eyes can play tricks on you. I don't always see stuff out of the corner of my eye and be like, oop, ghost. It was proved for me.
Yeah, right. And I don't think he did either. He's just kind of still being like,
yeah,
that's weird. Is that rat still running around?
I hate this rat.
So one night after work, he's just, enjoying his dinner, watching TV. And after about an hour watching TV in the recliner, this bottle of water that he'd left on the kitchen counter comes flying across the room at his face. And he said his reflex kicked in and he kind of moved his head, attempting to dodge it. But he said it still grazed his face before hitting the chair and then falling to the floor. And this was just the straw that broke the camel's back for Bill. He's like, I can't deny this. Like, whatever's going on here is something I could only describe as paranormal. This is beyond my understanding, my scope of science. And whatever it is, I can't pinpoint it, but it's weird and it's supernatural, for lack of a better term.
But then his gaze naturally goes down the hallway, and standing there, huffing and puffing, scowling, standing on 2 feet, is a rat looking him dead in the eyes. And yeah, okay, never mind. That doesn't happen. Sorry, go on, brother.
The Master Splinter origin.
And he tried to turn me into a ninja. It was weird.
So at this point, he's just starting to feel just seriously uneasy in his own house. He claimed that these feelings would kind of fade when he went to work. Like he was able to breathe, let his guard down. But as soon as he came back there at night, the dread started to set in again. And from there, the activity only increased. The knocks became more pronounced and the bed shaking, it returned.
Bummer.
Yeah.
That's a real bummer when you feel the most safe and secure at work.
And then you come home and you're like,
oh, God.
I can't wait to go to work. Yeah. So, as I mentioned before, Bill had moved back to Arlington in the first place to be around family. So one night, Bill had his brother, Bob, and his wife, Cindy, over for dinner and just some company with everything he'd experienced. They were all sitting around watching a movie, and suddenly, movement caught Bill's eye. And he described what he saw as several small creatures running out of his closet through his office and towards the outside wall.
And he could not explain why he heard doot, 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 doot.
So, naturally, being the first time that he actually saw something other than just assuming a rat, he kind of shot up. And Bob asked him, like, what's wrong? But, it says up to this point, Bill hadn't told his brother, or really anyone for that matter, about all these strange experiences, because I think he doesn't really know what to make of them to begin with. And he doesn't want to be, the NASA engineer that's talking about the ghosts in his basement or ghosts in his closet or whatever.
Yeah, the ghost rats.
Yeah, the ghost rats. So he kind of goes on to fill them in a little bit. Like, I've been hearing these strange noises. There's some weird things have been going on around here. I don't really know what's up, but I thought I just saw something. So he's like, Bob, will you come here and look in my closet to see if you notice anything strange? Because I swear I just saw something from there, and I just need you to look at it and tell me that I'm either crazy or not crazy. So Bob was actually interviewed later after this and said that when he entered the closet, he did feel something hit his leg. But again, he was kind of pragmatic, just like his brother. And he's like, well, I'm in the dark. I probably just bumped into a box or some shoes or something and thought nothing of it. Right after that, he said he felt something kind of bump him in the face. And he's like, wow, man, I must have just knocked something off the top shelf and it hit me in here. He's like, whatever. I'm not going to tell my brother any of this. He's already freaked out enough. Like, I'm just going to kind of leave it be and write this off. So he says he comes out and he tells this Bill, like, you need to tidy up in there. And that's all he pretty much tells him. So it wasn't until much later that he kind of came out and admitted, like, yeah, there were a few weird things that happened, but I just didn't want to send any more alarm to Bill than needed to be at this point.
Right.
So Bill's honestly kind of a little bit disappointed that his brother can't validate any of the weird stuff that he's experiencing. And then at this point he goes, do me a favor, come sit in my recliner and keep your head just looking towards the TV for a few minutes and let me know if you see anything. Well, a few minutes goes by and Bill notices Bob just kind of jump. And Bob then asks Cindy, his wife, to come sit where he was, telling her to look at the TV, but kind of be cognizant of the corner of her eye. And not long goes by before she just goes, "Oh my God." And they'd all seen something. So they just kind of start splitting up and searching the house. A few hours go by and they have no luck whatsoever. Nothing can be found. I don't assume this is a huge house, but you've got 3 people searching it and you spend a few hours on it. If something was in there, I think they would have found something.
Yeah.
So then they're kind of all just like scratching their heads, rehuddling back up. And Bill asked them, like, "Can you describe exactly what you saw?" And they both basically described the same thing. A little human, hunched over, about 2 feet tall. And they both claimed that they saw more than one. Cindy claimed that she saw close to 3 or 4 of these guys.
Coming to you this Christmas from the Hellmouth, Krampus Mini.
So at this point, Bill's wild experiences have been basically validated for him. He's like, well, whatever I've been seeing, I've got someone else that has seen the exact same thing, and they've gotten a pretty damn good look at it, and it's not a rat.
Yeah.
So at this point, he's kind of trying to learn all he can about just the world of the paranormal. Given his background, he's wanting to find a way to approach this from a scientific standpoint.
Of course.
So he goes online and he finds a local paranormal investigation team by the name Did You See That? Which I think is a really funny and fitting paranormal investigation crew name, because it's like its own joke in itself. When you watch those shows, how many times do you hear, "Did you see that?"
That's actually hilarious.
It really is.
Holy crap. Wow. Damn. Why didn't we think of that?
Right.
I got to say, from the standpoint of being somebody that is like coming from an engineering background, that has got to be such an experience to be like, I'm hitting up the paranormal guys.
Yeah, right.
What the hell is going on in my life?
Right. Midlife crisis. Who knows?
Yeah.
So this crew was led by Brian Hall and Sean Bowers. And Bill said he was just really impressed about how they just approached the subject from that scientific standpoint. And, since they treated these experiences in a framework that he could kind of be familiar with, he hired them to come investigate his house. And Bill noted that when they got there, he was really impressed with just the methodology the crew took. They didn't come like looking for ghosts. They came trying to help him find an answer on what's going on, be that paranormal or just a mundane explanation. And he really appreciated that, because here you have these guys coming in with the name paranormal investigators, and they're like, let's just check all the possibilities of like natural occurrences to eliminate those. So they start off, checking the AC unit, testing air pressure and flow through the house just to see if it could, potentially have the pressure or the flow to close any of these doors.
Turns out it was an HVAC troll.
They're checking to see if like any trees or anything outside might be, slamming or banging against the side of the house or causing the shaking. Like
clacking.
Yeah, exactly. But no rational explanation can be found. So that's when the crew decides to kind of focus their investigation onto Bill's bedroom, which is where a majority of that activity has kind of been taking place. They brought in, all your traditional equipment. They brought the EMF readers, infrared cameras, recorders to capture some EVP on. And although nothing actually happened that night, Brian said that he felt uneasy enough in the house that he actually requested to Bill to be able to return to do some follow-up investigations just out of his own curiosity on what was going on. It was significant enough of a case for him to almost donate his time towards just finding out what was going on there.
Yeah.
And man, over the course of several months, the Did You See That team performed over 20 investigations on Bill's home.
To be honest, man, great for them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a paranormal group and you have this dude that hits you up and is like, "Look, brother, my house is a wellspring of paranormal activity. Y'all just come in and do whatever you want." That's the dream.
Right. It's your laboratory to come practice in.
Exactly, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That good for them.
Yeah, for sure. And, they went about this pretty according to the scientific method, because you take a note, 20 investigations, they didn't really experience anything 19 of those times.
Yeah.
And if they were there pulling some bullshit, that wouldn't have happened.
That's why I feel like we got kind of lucky at the damn Lake Lure Inn.
Yeah,
dude,
yeah, no joke.
we weren't seeing full-bodied apparitions or Class 5 roaming specters, but it wasn't nothing.
Yeah. More on that to come for sure.
Yeah.
So one of these nights, as I alluded to, 1 out of the 20, they captured something that they considered to be pretty significant. And to do this, the team had set up kind of laser grids in precise areas of the house using a device to project them all over the rooms. So any movement you make is going to break this continuity of the beams, making any movement in the room extremely noticeable. The green dots kind of move along with the shape that was moving through the room, was the theory behind that.
Do you know if they developed that?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think laser grids have been used in paranormal. I mean, heck, this is 2002, so I don't really know how long laser grids have really been a part of that methodology.
I mean, maybe I'm sure obviously somebody was back at that time, because that's like around the time I was getting on the scene with this stuff, but I only ever really started seeing that prevalently. I mean, again, I was out of the scene for a while now, but there's that ghost hunting equipment website, and I noticed that they sold them on there, and I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting idea. And then I see that, like, in this case, they were using, I'm like, geez, how long, like, who started using this shit?
Who came up with that idea? Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because you've got it. It's almost like those classic, like,
Mission Impossible.
Yes,
you're breaking into the thing to get the jewelry.
Yes, 100%, dude. And the idea stands. Only instead of setting off a bunch of alarms, you're just going to be like, oh, that's weird. That shouldn't be there.
Yeah, that bipedal horned rat should not be there.
So they've got all this all set up, and one of the investigators began kind of trying to attempt an EVP session, just asking your traditional starter questions like, is anyone here with me? Can you give me a sign if you are? And suddenly one of the laser devices was described as moving violently. Apparently it fell off the table, fell off wherever it was situated on. And the team was in the room. They kind of rushed to grab cameras to capture all this. Wouldn't you know it? The first 2 cameras they grab, batteries completely drained.
And this is described from him in his book.
From him in his book. I'm not pulling this from any other resource. On top of that, he did get Brian and Sean to come corroborate the stories on his book, and they give their own testimonies. Everything described was, in fact, how it was operated here.
Dude, that is so insanely close to what Warren experienced with the trifield that flips over in the chair by itself and gives off the audible squeal before it does it.
Yeah.
It's weird, dude.
And the battery being drained, let's just say might have something that hits a little close to home on that one from the Lake Lure stories that we have for you.
No shit.
So luckily, they were able to grab a third camera and capture kind of the tail end of this, but they just film where the laser grid is kind of interrupted. And when they go back and watch the footage, they can visibly see a mist forming across the laser, kind of in a swirling shape that they describe as a vortex. So they're saying it's a vortex. They're just saying there's a mist forming some weird shape that resembles that.
Which, dude, this is the episode that's coming out directly after Warren telling his story of seeing a swirling vortex mist in front of his face and taking a photograph of it. I mean, dude, that's pretty freaking crazy.
Yeah. I think the one difference here is that no one on the team was able to witness this mist with their own eyes.
Right.
This was only something they captured on the camera.
Right, yeah.
So they're playing this tape back and watching this green laser grid move. They also noticed there was some audio present right at the precise time that all this happens. They cranked up the audio volume and they can make out a voice saying, "Put it back, he's coming."
And I am Rat Demon, witness me.
You know, with a lot of EVPs, it's kind of abrupt, kind of harsh. I think some of these situations you could kind of trick your mind into making it sound like what you want it to sound like. But there's some type of voice that they captured on this in addition to what just happened with the bit of the fluctuation with the laser grid they had going on. So I think the two compounding together for Brian and his team, and even previously skeptic Bill, this is enough for them to feel comfortable saying, like, you've got something paranormal going on in your house.
Yeah.
Can't put a finger on it at this point, but we feel that we've captured sufficient evidence. And for a paranormal investigation team to say that, you know, they did. I mean, that's kind of a real big trophy to walk away with in some situation like that. They came away with video and audio don't know if you could say evidence, but at least data points to kind of point towards something weird's going on here. But at this point, like Bill he's pretty out of his element at this point. Like very, against this world, but just something he's never even considered to be factual. This has just been complete science fiction fantasy to him up until this point. And he doesn't really know how to like rationalize this. So I think it's really the EVP that's eating at him the most, because it's almost like a voice that he interpreted to be directed at him.
Yeah.
So he calls up his friend Mike, who's this audio production expert. He's worked as an audio engineer on a bunch of like TV shows, podcasts, if they had podcasts then, whatever a version of a podcast was in 2002. But he's worked on, projects involving audio engineering for entertainment shows and stuff like that.
If it wasn't then, it was not long after that a podcast was invented, because the podcast was invented by Adam Curry, the MTV VJ back in the day. And R.I.P. MTV, they closed,
I saw that.
Closed every single door. But yeah, he was the inventor of the podcast.
Okay. Well, anyways, after kind of catching up for a bit, Bill just starts to explain these strange encounters to Mike, and hoping he could just provide some sort of context to the weird EVP that had been recorded and heard. Like maybe there's some sort of scientific explanations. You hearing something weird too?
Yeah. Is it really loud?
Not really loud. I just heard like a weird little buzz, buzz, buzz. It's gone now.
Demon Rat is not real. He can't hurt you.
He's in your wall.
Oh, God. Oh, God. He died in there.
Anyways.
Oh, God.
So Bill's like, hey, Mike, like, is there anything that could just like rationally explain a random voice being captured on this little audio recorder we have? And that's when he says all of a sudden static just comes through the phone and the two are unable to hear each other. Awkward timing. I know.
What the
A really awkward timing.
All right. All right, let's keep going. I'm glad we're recording.
Right. So they say
demon starts coming to talking to us.
They say that they're completely unable to hear each other once the static kicks in. They both said they start kind of trying to yell at each other like, hey, can you hear me? Are you still there? And at once, a third voice comes over the line, but it's a deep, guttural voice speaking in what is described as tongues or some other type of unrecognizable language. Bill said his stomach just turned and he instantly knew this thing was dangerous. And he just starts yelling like, Mike, hang up the phone. Do not listen to this. Can you even hear me? Mike, get off the phone. And then the static stops and the two could hear each other again. And Mike's like, dude, did you hear? What was that? And he's like, they could both hear it, but couldn't hear each other. Now, luckily, Mike being an audio engineer, he had everything set up to record the phone conversation as soon as the static started kicking in, because Bill's already describing having something weird going on, and then that starts happening. So it's a little bit too much of a coincidence in Mike's mind. So he goes to record the phone line, and then they play back the recording. Only this time, you can clearly hear Bill and Mike kind of shouting back and forth, trying to reach each other for all the "Are you there's?" But this time, the third voice is completely missing from the recording, even though both of them had clearly heard it. And Mike was stumped. He was left with no technical explanation of how this could have happened or been possible.
Yeah. I mean, has Mike, separately from this book, corroborated this information?
Mike wrote in, there's a whole chapter at the end of this book with a lot of these people that wrote in their own section, and Mike said everything that Bill described in his book happened as described.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Coming from an audio perspective, if a signal is coming through a line and you're running a recorder,
how is that going to be?
How is that just not going to show up on the thing?
Yeah. So in Mr. Ballen's version of the story, there's some other iteration where they get another phone call where like Bill is up at 3 a.m. researching and his internet goes out. So he calls the ISP and they experience the same thing. But I don't know. That was not in Bill's book. And to be honest.
Yeah. Can you please give me the explanation you gave me before the podcast about that episode, or about that part? Because that was so funny.
So when you sent me this video, I'm like, man, this is a crazy story. But the first part that I'm like starting to be like, I don't know about this, is Bill and Mr. Ballen's version. Bill's up at 3 a.m. doing some paranormal research and his internet goes out. So he calls up his ISP. And they just happen to be working at 3 a.m. and they take his call and they're sitting there helping him troubleshoot everything when this deep guttural voice comes through again and they lose connection. And then Bill says that because they lost connection, his internet provider was so nice to call him back to make sure everything was okay at 3 a.m. And to me, that is the most unbelievable part of this entire telling of the story.
Now, I don't think it's impossible because does he ever specify that the ISP technician support was American?
He doesn't specify that, no. I mean, and yes, I guess that could be a possible situation, but like, how many times when you get disconnected on a line like that, are they calling you back regardless of the time of day?
Sure, yeah. They're like, and he's gone. I'm going to continue to sit here and play Candy Crush.
And interestingly enough, this whole story was completely omitted from Bill's book. So I think that might have been maybe added for some dramatic effect with some of those, whether that appeared on the initial TV show or just some of these more modern tellings of it. I don't really know, but it didn't come from Bill himself. So,
or at least from the book.
At least from the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. You know, maybe that was one story that Bill used to tell, but decided.
Yeah, I mean, it could have. Yeah, it could have just been some stuff he had, because he has done interviews. Otherwise, so maybe that did happen. But again, it is kind of. I understand 100% where you're coming from, because it's like they're not gonna pick up for me at 3.
Yeah, right. So you know, understandably, Bill's just falling deeper into this world that he had previously not even believed in. This is where he's starting to get the paranoia setting in. He's dreading nights alone in the house. Now, you're probably wondering why Bill just didn't like bite the bullet, attempt to sell the house, get the hell out of there. But he claimed that he would have been unable to live with himself if he had passed down whatever was living in this house to someone else or even a family that might have purchased the house. So he just decided, I'm going to figure this out myself, and I'm going to take it on headstrong.
And dude, from that perspective, good on you, brother.
Yeah, for sure. That's
dope.
pretty admirable, because, you know, how many times do you hear family moves into a house it's unexplainably affordable for them that they would never have been able to afford otherwise.
Too many times.
And then the little girl starts experiencing something weird or something.
I mean, I think that you and I are going to be a little biased in the way that we would look at a situation like that. Like, I wouldn't want to live in a house where that was going on. Mm-hmm. However, in a way, I do wonder if in some ways he was like, yes, I don't want anybody else to have to experience what I'm experiencing. But I do think in some ways, from him being like of a bit of a scientific mind, is like, is this the next big problem to solve?
Like, is this a breakthrough that we could potentially have?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, is this seriously, we've looked at the cosmos and all this stuff, but is there actually something happening here on this planet that is so beyond our understanding? And he's kind of like, he's frightened by it. He's bothered by this, obviously. It like wakes him up. There might be little mother effing Krampuses prancing through his hallways at night. But part of me wants to think that his mindset looking into this is like, this is another interesting problem to solve, as disturbing as it is.
Right? Sell it to Hawkins Lab.
Dude, there you go.
More to come on that very shortly. But anyways, this is, like I said, the paranoia setting in. The suspense is just really I think it's really affecting Bill's health from here. Like, he says it's pretty much keeping him from fully resting or getting a good night's sleep pretty consistently every night. He said he's kind of just like waking up in a paranoid state, going to check his house every probably a couple times an hour from what he described. This leads to health issues and even eventually heart attacks for poor Bill. So at this point, he's beginning just to kind of question his sanity to begin with, like being unable to distinguish some of these nightmares, some of these weird experiences at night from reality. Like, he doesn't know if he's in like almost a sleep paralysis state when some of this is going on and convincing himself he's experiencing some of this, or if he's actually just continuing to have some terrifying experiences.
Sure.
And this is where various reports describing these experiences, I think they get a little bit skewed depending on what source you hear them from. Some of these involve a hand coming from under the bed and grabbing his leg at night. Some of them talk about visibly seeing his bed pushed down by little handprints. Like, he could see the indentations on the bed of a little small handprint pushing the bed down, but seeing nothing there. One experience is described as feeling the mattress depress as if something sits down on the edge of the bed and proceeds to kind of roll over and join him in bed.
Right.
So, weird things going on. But again, it's kind of hard to tell how much of this is coming from his dreams and how much of this Bill is actually truly experiencing at this point.
It's also hard to tell if the demon is trying to talk to us through the podcast right now, because we've been doing this podcast for a year, and then you start talking about a demon thing that's trying to talk to Bill Vaile through the frickin' phone, and the next thing we know, we're getting this. It's not the most prominent, but I'm sure you're hearing it on the recording right now. What the hell is that all about?
Hey, it just adds to the effect for this episode for me.
You know, every single time we talk to Greenfield, I feel like the veil gets thinner.
Right? Maybe that's part of it.
Demon, oh, hey, dude, let's try something real quick. Demon, if you're here, speak. All right.
Okay, I'm kind of relieved there. I was like, guttural voice. Okay,
Bro,
we're good.
This would have been the biggest rated podcast of all time if that shit had happened.
I think I'd have thrown the headphones off and just gone home.
Like, yeah, I think we covered all we need to about that one. Good night, everybody. Be kind to your local demon rat.
So on top of his restless night, he's just frequently hearing these loud crashing sounds throughout the house. Some of it describes like it almost sounds like a truck is smashing into his house. Other descriptions of it sounds like just large pieces of furniture are being toppled over. So he's running out in the middle of the night after hearing these crashes, only to find everything just as he left it. No damage anywhere. And it kind of gets a little bit weird from here because he starts to describe the sensation of being touched at night, sometimes feeling a shocking sensation. And this is the weird one for me. Is awakening to find scratches on his body.
I've seen a ton of things where people describe this. We talked about this in the episode with Micah about like ghosts physically harming people. This shit freaks me out a little bit.
It does. Especially when you've got something that, isn't physically noticeable or visible to anyone from the naked eye, presumably, except for the time that, he had Bob and his wife over and they just saw the imps marching through the house.
Yeah.
But for the most part, this is kind of an invisible entity or force. So having some sort of physical evidence of contact in the form of a scratch, that kind of freaks me out too.
Oh man, that's in-game haunting.
Right. Because, this is still that point in time where he's like, how much of this is real? How much of this I'm dreaming? He wakes up and finds scratches. Like, unless he's just paranoidally scratching himself in his sleep at this point.
Yeah, which isn't impossible,
It's
but
not,
I think the point where it becomes improbable are like hard to reach places on your back, things like that. But I don't know where these were popping up.
Yeah, it isn't described where they were found, so kind of alludes to them being all over his body. And still, kind of in the midst of all this, he describes actually seeing a full body apparition. Only it appeared as a lady dressed in Victorian clothing that he only noticed on a reflection.
I figured out the demon, everybody. So this is for all you tech heads at home. If the microphone cable is touching a power supply of a computer, it picks up on the cycling. And that's what causes that thing. So I noticed that your microphone cable was tangled up in your power supply. And it was causing that buzz. It can literally just be touching it, and it will cause that audio interference. Micah and I have learned things like that over years of doing podcasts. And dude, when we would be at the old Graylian Report studio, it would be like every week, like, what's the new buzz? We'd be like, it's like we didn't even move anything. But anyway, I'm glad that we figured out that wasn't a demon.
Yeah. Now I could comfortably go on with the rest of the story. Anyways, later that night, the covers were pulled over his body when he was in bed. He's kind of, having his normal paranoid, restless night of little sleep.
Sure.
And he said he sits up in a panic. Only this time, he unmistakably sees a dark, menacing figure at the foot of his bed.
Get out of my room, Gary Busey.
It stood 6 foot tall, wearing a fedora and a trench coat. It began to move towards him, but he described the movement as almost floating rather than walking.
Get out of my room, Spider Noir.
And as soon as the figure reached Bill, it disappeared in thin air. Now, after this, after seeing something visibly in the form of whatever you want to call that, he sets up a camera in the subsequent nights, just trying to capture anything that might be able to almost confirm or corroborate whatever the hell that was that he saw.
Right.
And one of the following nights, he says that he was able to capture footage of some sort of, shapeless black mass that almost looks like it's falling from the ceiling, but it falls into the exact location at the foot of his bed where he had seen the figure appear. So he's convinced that whatever it is, it has to do with the figure in the hat, for now, as we'll call it. And now, to me, this is really one of the most interesting parts of the story, because in case you didn't know, there's a pretty widespread phenomenon that people have reported known as Hat Man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And Hat Man is described as a tall, shadowy figure wearing a trench coat and a fedora. Pretty common uniform, but it matches to a T the description of what Bill saw. Now, they say that Hat Man is known to appear in, your standard paranormal encounters, but he's often associated with sleep paralysis.
Right.
Seems pretty on the nose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Raises a lot of questions, though, too.
Well, it gets even weirder from here, because it turns out Bill wasn't the only one of his friends to have experienced Hat Man. He has a friend, he calls him Devin in the book. I guess they had a little bit of a falling out that you'll hear about. And he doesn't want to use his real name. But for all intents and purposes, we'll go with Devin. And he mentioned, just kind of talking on some of the situations that he'd had, that when he's recounting his experiences to his friend, Devin says, he's like, wait, I've seen something similar to that, like describing the same tall, dark figure, trench coat, fedora. However, Devin believed that this entity was friendly, and he didn't fear it at all. He thought this was just kind of a friendly spirit, if you will.
That friendly ghost that stands at the foot of my bed and
Right?
watches me sleep.
Now, Bill warned Devin, do not try to communicate with Hat Man if you encounter him again. But unfortunately, this did not stop Devin. While at Bill's house one day, Devin claimed to see Hat Man appear in the bedroom closet again. He said he appeared with red glowing eyes and in a deep voice, repeatedly uttering, "Kill Bill, kill Bill, kill Bill."
What about that doesn't sound friendly to you?
Well, I mean, like, maybe he's just a big Tarantino fan, like trying to advocate for what they want to watch next. I don't know.
What year did Kill Bill come out?
Shit, I don't know. It can't be too far from 2002, can it? I feel like it was out by then.
I know who knows.
The Google.
Hold on a second. I can find this out. Kill Bill release 2003.
Ooh. The premonition of what was to come.
This was what year that this happened?
So it all started in 2002. It doesn't necessarily give you the timeline for when each event happened.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So
Kill Bill could have been out by then.
maybe he really was a Tarantino fan.
I want to see that new Tarantino movie.
The other thing about this that I find this kind of nice, though, is like if I do fall into a hellmouth and become a demon, at least I know I'll be able to buy a nice London fog jacket.
There you go. But at this point on, things get weird because Bill starts to notice a change in Devin. He becomes just more distant, more detached, and almost violent. At one point, he threatened Bill with a large knife over an argument. And one night, after a fit of throwing and breaking things, Devin told Bill he's here and he wants you dead. And Bill just calmly responded like, yeah, okay, he's been living with me for how long? This thing can't kill me. If he wanted to kill me, I'd be dead by now. And Devin kind of said something to the effect of, turn out the lights and see for yourself. So, at this point, Bill knew that friendship was over. Understandably.
I don't think this part was on the Mr. Ballin
It was
video.
not on the Mr. Ballin video whatsoever.
Holy shit.
That's what I'm telling you. Mr. Ballin missed some of the best parts of the story.
Whoa, yeah, you weren't kidding, dude.
He didn't believe that Hat Man could kill him, but he thought that Hat Man might be able to convince Devin to get the job done. So he's like, you're influenced by this clearly. I need this person out of my life.
You know where my mind goes with this?
What's that?
When he first encounters the woman and the three guys.
Yeah.
It's almost like this entity is
latching on.
It's latching onto multiple people
Yeah.
to perpetrate whatever it wants to do to these people. But somehow these initial three guys were like, this thing's trying to kill us. We got to get it out of us.
Yeah, right?
But this dude is going full Vecna, like, I have become one with Hat Man. Your ass is dead.
Well,
oh my God, that is terrifying.
I'm gonna pull one section from the book here. I don't want to use too many direct quotes, but this one I thought was worth noting because in his book, Bill states, I believe much later that this dark figure was the main power over all the entities in this house. They did the dark figure's bidding. Once I realized that, I knew the end of the battle was close. My experiences with Devin made that clear to me. The Hat Man is the general, and he's going to be present for the final battle that I was convinced was coming soon. Now, all this phrasing is sending me down a bit of a side tangent here, because if you're like us and have been watching the new final season of Stranger Things, you might notice a bit of a parallel here. And I don't want to give anything away to anyone that might not have watched everything yet. But if you've seen the first couple episodes, I'm not giving anything away. And if you haven't, Very, very minor spoiler alert warning here. But in this season, Vecna appears to various children, but in his previous human form, Henry. Only this time, Henry is dressed in a trench coat, wearing a fedora.
What you're saying is that the Duffer Brothers were trying to pull mythology from Hat Man a little bit?
100,000%.
Okay.
Because it seems to appear like when he appears to these kids, they're almost in some sort of trance state or like liminal state when they're able to see him anyways. Because like, as you see in those episodes, like when Holly first comes across Henry or dressed in the trench coat and fedora, she's coming off like the spinning merry-go-round and she's kind of like dizzy, kind of liminally out of it at the time. So I think they're kind of making a light Easter egg or kind of a nod to the Hat Man lore. So I think it's just kind of ironic that this topic popped up for this week's episode in the midst of all of that going on.
That is weird.
Quite honestly, when I saw him dressed the way he was, my mind went to Hat Man immediately.
Well, there it is. There's the synchronicity that we always talk about.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing for me is like, I know peripherally about Hat Man, but I think the thing that's odd to me, the stranger thing is that I guess I didn't realize like how popular Hat Man was to where, and I suppose if you're making a show called Stranger Things, you're probably like looking into like what's some of the weirder shit out there.
Oh, dude, for sure. Because I mean, honestly, if you're kind of into like general paranormal lore and you've been following Stranger Things since the beginning, like you've got nods to everything from like MK Ultra, which is like the big central theme of the show. I mean, you're touching on alternate dimensions, interdimensional beings, and now you've kind of got this kind of like light nod to Hat Man. It's like, I think the Duffer Brothers kind of have dabbled in the paranormal world a little bit.
That's badass, dude. I mean, like I said, I just personally have not been as familiar with the idea of Hat Man. That's probably just because, you know, it's just like it's like Rendlesham. It's like one of those things where it's like I just never really went down the rabbit hole with it. But that's creepy as shit, dude.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I have the feeling this isn't the last time that we'll explore some Hat Man lore here on the show. Might have to dig down this rabbit hole a little more.
Yeah, I kind of don't want to speak ill of him, but he's getting his own episode.
Oh, for sure. You know, and maybe there's even some crossover with, you know, the traditional Men in Black type figures that we were discussing with Micah and Alan Greenfield the other week. Because, you know,
yeah, sure.
Historically, they didn't start off all looking like Will Smith on the snazzy suits.
Well, exactly.
Kind of described a little different.
Yeah, they were looking a slight bit more bohemian.
Yeah. But anyways, into the side tangent, thought that was a interesting coincidence and maybe just a fun Easter egg if you're a fan of Stranger Things on top of our show. But to jump back to our story with Bill, this is where some of the accounts of the experience vary. And I admit some of the details and some tellings of the story, you know, whether they come from that initial TV show episode or some of those modern tellings, they are a little bit embellished. And Bill admitted to as much when he was writing this book. And that's really why he wanted to get his story out to begin with. He wanted to set his story straight and not be kind of associated with some of these other details that maybe had gotten a little bit twisted up in his initial story, whether that was coming from, you know, other various sources that have kind of told his own tale. You know, I think the YouTube video you sent me about this initially, Mr. Ballin claimed that various exorcisms were attempted at the house, but nothing worked, and Bill just kind of accepted his fate. And that's kind of where Mr. Ballin ended his video.
Right.
Well, not entirely the case, according to Bill. He claims that at first he attempted various kind of Wiccan and New Age methods for cleansing the house, but nothing worked. So he maybe wrote it off at that point because none of those were working. However, according to Bill's account, from there he researched, he learned about, and did everything he could to perform a traditional Christianity-based exorcism that vanquished the entity from his house. In fact, that's pretty much the entire premise of his book that is in fact titled Satanic Warfare, Tactics of the Demonic and Lessons Learned.
So you're saying that he claims that he did an exorcism and it worked?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because I think that's kind of the exact frame of reference that he builds for the entire experience through the rest of the book. Really, like, he's framing it that way to set up every single chapter. He starts with some sort of like scripture or Bible verse that's somehow relevant or connected back to the topic of the chapter. And in fact, for the rest of the book, which is really over half the book, after he kind of details experience, Bill goes on to explain in detail concept of what he describes as spiritual warfare and the tactics that he took to perform this exorcism and why it works the way it did. He goes on to kind of makes some bold claims that like you cannot vanquish entities like this without the help of Jesus Christ.
Right.
And now let me say, I don't want to discount or demean anyone's religious or spiritual beliefs on this. I also don't want to belittle Bill's experiences because I do believe that he truly went through some terrifying and traumatic shit. But I will say that I kind of take issue with the absolute certainty that he frames his experiences with for the rest of the book. Because again, I don't mean to take it away from anyone's beliefs. And I definitely don't want to come across like I'm doubting what Bill experienced. And if the traditional exorcism is what finally brought him peace, then I'm on board with it and don't doubt the effectiveness of the ceremony or ritual or whatever you want to call it. However, just throughout the rest of the book, it is framed with such certainty that Jesus is the absolute only answer to a situation like this, when in reality, I think that was just the best frame of reference that Bill could understand and rationalize this experience in. And yeah, the Christianity-based exorcisms worked, but maybe because that was the only thing that he could really put his true belief into to rationalize it in a way that he could almost understand or accept.
It wasn't very long ago at all that we did our episode about this thing that we called The Haunting in Winston-Salem.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I really enjoyed about that, essentially they perform a form of ritual and or exorcism.
Yeah.
And these two people that were featured talking about this, the thing that I thought was interesting was they were like, I'm fairly certain that this is where this comes from. If I'm wrong, I think you might remember. But they talk about it really doesn't necessarily matter what your denominational or religious belief is. It really kind of comes down to the intent. And I think that when you have like there's so many different belief systems in the world. But when you believe something wholeheartedly and you put that force out there into the world, maybe it is Jesus. Maybe it is Buddha. Maybe it is any of these entities that are these entities that are essentially lending you the power to be able to cleanse your home and bring peace to your place. I really liked that approach. Now, again, I can't sit here and say that I know for a fact that exorcisms or cleansing rituals or any of that stuff is real and or works. But what I will say is, obviously Bill, from his account here in this book, was experiencing something, and whatever, maybe it was Jesus. Maybe it was just his intent. Maybe it was his belief in understanding and hoping and believing that the situation could get better. And that's how that thing gets cleansed. I look at that the exact same way as I look at anybody's religion.
Yeah.
If that works for you, then it works.
100%. And that's what I'm trying to emphasize here. I'm not doubting that actually worked for him. And honestly, that's one of the happiest endings you could possibly have to this story.
Of course, after all of that.
Yeah, yeah. My issue is just like when you do frame it of this is what I did and this is the only way, you have to treat it this way, you have to treat it from this frame of mind. Like I don't doubt what he went through. I don't doubt that the exorcism was effective in ridding his house. I just stop short of saying that is the only explanation on ways to view these experiences because, let's look at it like little entities are not exclusive to demonology whatsoever. Like
sure.
We've heard that from Cherokee lore. We've heard that from, heck, there's probably a lot more tie-overs or parallels to some Fae lore with some of this, kind of liminal space or sleep paralysis type state that you hear about some of these other little people appearing in. And one thing, while I mentioned the topic Fae, I do want to mention we've talked about the meadery Fae nectar down in Lake Lure a few times. They actually have a GoFundMe page up right now. They did not get the FEMA grant to continue on with the business like planned.
Oh, man.
So they are accepting donations. I think they're about halfway to their goal right now. But again, this place is pretty much a meadery bar straight out of Middle Earth. Like you couldn't find a cooler fantasy themed establishment in Western North Carolina. And being in the location that it is, like wholeheartedly want to advocate for them and that GoFundMe page. So if you can.
I'm very glad that you brought that up. Again, this is Fae Nectar, and they are right there in really the realm between Lake Lure and Chimney Rock.
Yeah.
And they got absolutely, that whole community got destroyed by Helene. It's a lot worse still. That rebuild is still ongoing.
For sure.
They are not even like, nearing 50% of rebuilding.
For sure.
They need you. Please look that up. Please look up Fae Nectar, and please, if you have any money to spare, please donate to their GoFundMe.
Yeah, didn't mean to derail us here again, but I mentioned the word Fae, and it just like sparked a little light bulb for me.
I get you, and that's news to me, and we love that place, so glad to help.
For sure. But to jump back on track, like I said, little people aren't exclusive to demonology. I mean, Hat Man is not exclusive to demonology either.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of just a limiting constraint to put on something like that that's so widely experienced.
I recognize where he's coming from, and I recognize where you're coming from. I think, the operative phrase that I think could bridge the two worlds is, this is what worked for me.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah,
exactly. And demonic figures aren't also exclusive to Christianity. I mean, you have, I think of the jinn in Islamic and Arabic faith, and they're described as dark, tall, shadowy entities, kind of capable of shape-shifting, and also they're commonly noticed in people's peripheral vision. So, you're kind of talking about two sides of the same coin here. You're using a lot of different terminology, different names to maybe describe the same phenomenon that's going on across religions and cultures.
I mean, dude, with all of the crazy things and all of the strange paranormal stories that I have heard, when I think about this idea of Hat Man, it's just like, I don't find it all that far-fetched. And especially when you have so many people that have experienced it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I tend to think about this is a very strange, scientifically proven one day dimensional shift.
That
we are experiencing. That is the thing that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, for sure.
And look, I think that can exist in the context of religion. I think it just depends on how you look at it.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that this is, incapable with the context or concept of religion. I'm just saying to limit it to one specific view in religion. It's a little bit of a limited worldview is the best I'll put it.
Totally hear you there.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, not trying to offend anyone. I think everyone gets what I'm kind of just coming at, is that, it worked for Bill, and that was his frame of reference to be able to understand and rationalize something that was a completely foreign concept to him. And, glad to hear that a story like this kind of did have its own quasi-happy ending.
Yeah, and hey, I don't know if he went from being like atheist to full-on Christian.
No, he did admit that he had a religious background before this,
right,
which I think gave him that frame of reference to be able to almost explain and accept all these weird things under.
Sure. Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway is just like the world is a lot stranger place than most people are like even capable of understanding. So whatever frame of reference makes sense for people to rationalize these experiences in, I'm all for. Whether that is, something that is religious, whether that's something that, might be just drawing a reference from a paranormal TV show. Who knows? I
think hauntings are all inclusive. No matter what you believe in, these sons of bitches gonna find you.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, but it is really, really interesting to look at it from multiple frames of reference. Like, I know for a fact that there's plenty of people out there that have any denomination of belief that experience very similar things. So at the end of the day, it's just like, I think it's kind of, in my opinion, I think it's kind of interesting and bringing people together, that here are people with all these different backgrounds that are experiencing some of the same reports of the same entities.
Yeah, exactly. So, just different names for them.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, I mean, you could follow that same line of thinking going back to like ancient religions and mythology. You look at the crossovers. Obviously, Greek and Roman are the easy ones because you're pretty much one for one on those comparisons. But when you start looking at some of these gods and entities from those traditions, you could find parallels across Egyptian mythology. You could find it in Norse. You could find it in Mesopotamian.
Absolutely.
So like you're almost referencing the same phenomenon, but through a different lens and different terminology, which I think is pretty much spot on for what I'm trying to kind of beat around the bush here for what Bill experienced.
Dude, I hear you there. I love it. I think we all are speaking the same language. We're trying to interpret this wild existential thing through very similar lenses. And I think that it's obviously a bummer when these things become weaponized and then we're fighting over them, when we should look at these things as like, wow, we actually, like, all of our beliefs are very similar.
Yeah.
But I think it's so cool when you have things like these paranormal occurrences, which are, again, very subjective in nature, but when so many different people are talking about experiencing the same thing, that's a bridge.
Right?
It's
Yeah.
interesting as hell.
Pop, Coke, soda, it's all the same.
Yep.
You're all talking about the same thing.
RC Cola, Pepsi is the same drink. Not really, but
I'm just talking about, like, when you go to the Midwest, they're like, hey, you want a pop? And you're like,
Yeah.
what the hell are you talking
Yeah.
about?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But yeah, I think, we all might be not be speaking the same language, but deep down, we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, for sure. So, dude, what year does Bill Vaile's wild quest end with this exorcism?
It doesn't really give too much of a date reference, and if it did, I must have missed that in my note.
Well, what year does his book come out?
The book was fairly recent. This book came out in 2022, so fairly recently, a couple, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It's 2026 now.
Well, let me just say, Bill, if you're out there and you're listening, I hope you enjoyed my never-ending, ongoing demon rat jokes, because I'm only saying this because I'm not making fun of your situation. I'm just making fun of demon rats because the concept is funny. But, Bill, I hope you're able to sell the house now. If that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
Or if you have this crazy trauma bond with the property, rock and roll. Either way, I'm very happy to hear that he was able to find peace, especially in a place where he's reporting that these things are physically harming him.
Yeah, and I think that he's been able to, through his book, help other people that have similar shared experiences, if nothing else, just to give them that comfort of, they're not alone in these crazy experiences that sometimes happen in parts of the world that are, situations that might not be ones you're comfortable talking about with friends and family, but you have a resource like this that not only describes the complete experience that he went through, it kind of describes the process of what he did to find peace in the end. So I hope that his book has helped a lot of people out there.
Yeah, well, so right before we started this episode of the podcast, I was saying we hadn't had a chance to talk about, what do you think about this story? Because I've heard this thing. It's really, really crazy. And, obviously there are some inconsistencies with the way that certain outlets have portrayed the story and the certain details.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, you just kind of got to take the word straight from the horse's mouth and take him at his word. Now, did all this stuff really happen to him? I don't know. Does it help that there are other people that are essentially taking time and effort to corroborate this in written form in his book and say that essentially what he's claiming happened, they also say happened? Yes, it does help that.
Yeah.
A lot. So at the end of the day, whether Bill Vaile and his family were actually witnessing these, what is referred to, I think, in the Mr. Ballin video as imps going through his house, and this hat man, if everything that they're saying is true, that's a hell of a haunting.
Yeah, no joke. And with this one, I don't think I have any reason to doubt Bill on it, because even some of the more, slightly sensational parts of the story that could seem unbelievable, there are points that he references as this part, I don't know if I was experiencing just sleep paralysis and convincing myself that
Sure.
some of these things were nightmares were actually happening. He himself admits to not being able to firmly draw the line between some of these things.
Yeah, and that's okay.
I think that's great, because
Yes.
that goes a step beyond that. It's just maybe some of the things that I thought I was experiencing weren't completely happening in reality, but I know something damn weird was happening. So I think it almost has that self-realization in it that I know this sounds unbelievable, but I'm going to lay out everything on the line. And I think the fact that he did years later come out and publish this book in an attempt to kind of set the record straight to get some of these more sensational details kind of removed from the telling of the story goes even a bit further to his credibility.
Well, let me just say, as far as I'm concerned, from the information that you put forth on this podcast tonight, I think that there's enough evidence there and enough corroboration from other people to give the guy the benefit of the doubt on what the claims that he's making are and them being true.
Yeah.
And in that line of thought, I just want to say, Bill, if you ever come across this episode, dude, thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for putting in that kind of thought and research into this phenomenon that you were experiencing, because there's not a lot of people on the planet that really get to experience. I mean, dude, if it's a 1 to 10 spectrum, that's a damn 10 haunting.
Right. Yeah,
There's
no
not
joke.
that many people that would experience that and then stick around and
Yeah.
try to figure out what's going on.
And not dump this on some other poor family that's going to purchase the house. Like, he's like, I'm going to take this thing on myself.
Wouldn't just stage a frickin' water purification appointment to thrust a demon on you through a planned exorcism. You know how the old trap goes. Classic Wile E. Coyote Acme stuff. I mean, so, dude, I have to say that, like, when we first were talking about this before the episode, I was worried that in this book, it was going to be this very, like, vague, watered-down version of what I had initially understood of the story. But that is definitely not the case.
Yeah, I think he not only sets the record straight, he goes into some details that are kind of omitted from other versions of it.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I went in here thinking this whole thing is going to be debunked. This is all going to be bullshit. No, it was augmented by the end of it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Completely augmented. You know, this is, in my opinion, this is one of those cases where it's almost another thing like Robert the Doll. You go in thinking this is going to be one of those easy cases where we just knock, the Dr. Bird does his damn thing, knocks this nonsense out of the water, and then we all go sleep well at night. The one question on my mind after this whole thing is, who the hell is the Hat Man?
That was a very good question.
Well,
but one that we will have to explore very soon.
Let's get out of this crap. I'm freaked out. That said, everybody, we hope you have enjoyed this episode of Ghosts in the Mountains. Austin, dude, you just get better and better at this stuff. Dude, Well,
I appreciate that. It's, you kind of start to develop your rhythm after a while.
Oh,
like,
dude. You're 1 year into this, a year and a couple of days into this, or weeks or so, and you're already showing just like master levels of research. And brother, here we are, year 2 of Ghosts in the Mountains.
Yeah, this is 52. This is exactly the 1 year stretch.
Yes, sir, it is. And here we are. I'm loving this, man. I have so much fun with you. You teach me so much through the things that you are able to find and your research prowess, and just you as a bud. I love you, brother.
Love you too, man.
I love doing
cheers
this.
to year 2.
Yeah, cheers to year 2. I love doing this thing. We got a crazy year ahead of us that we're going to bring to you many more things. Listen, guys, when people go on Instagram and they say big things coming, well, we're not going to say that to you because we don't know what's coming. But what we do know is we are thinking about different things we could be doing in the world of Ghosts in the Mountains. We're not making any promises. We're still trying to figure it out. You're always going to have this podcast, but we're going to try to figure out ways to make this even more awesome for you. We're going to be looking into it. That said, if I completely go back on my statement and we never figure out ways to make it awesome, sorry, but we still will be at ghostinthemountains.com. You can subscribe to us on Patreon, and if you are a subscriber, you do get some behind-the-scenes stuff, and hopefully we will be able to continue that.
And adding a little more to the pot there.
Yeah, adding a little bit more to the pot, augmenting the experience as a whole, and I hope that we're able to do that. So, again, thank you so much for hanging in there with us for a whole year and a couple of days or weeks, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Ghosts in the Mountains. The Hat Man's coming to get you, Barbara.
Man, I have to admit, seeing that right after this, or reading that right after like the whole Stranger Things thing, as soon as I saw that episode with him in there, I'm like,
bro,
is that a Hat Man reference? And then seeing a chapter of the book is called The Frickin' Hat Man.
Dude, there's a reason they had Jamie Campbell Bower in Atlanta or somewhere in Georgia in the middle of the summer in a wool coat and a hat.
Right?
Jamie, thank you. You sacrificed your borderline heat stroke for our lore of the Hat Man. I am freaked out by him. We're going to have to look into this shit more.
Oh, yeah.
This is the longest keister egg ever, and it wasn't even funny. So I'll leave you with this. The demon rats are coming for you. There's one in your walls right now. He's running around like Sonic the frickin' Hedgehog. All right. That wasn't even that great. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Please continue listening. We love you. Good night.